Have you ever been around someone who seems almost too perfect? They're courteous, composed, articulate, always gracious, always in control. They never snap, never speak out of turn, never show anger or irritation. And yet, despite the flawless exterior, something about them feels off. It's not what they say that unsettles you. It's what remains unsaid. A subtle, silent void. Like something essential is being concealed. Carl Jung had a term for that buried presence. He called it the shadow, and those who hide it most skillfully, they're often the ones we should be most cautious of, not because they're malicious, but because they're unaware of what lies beneath. And when someone doesn't recognize their own darkness, their behavior becomes unpredictable. Jung didn't think the greatest threats were the loudest or most aggressive people. He warned that real danger comes from those who are completely unaware of their inner darkness. Not because they've faced it and overcome it, but because they've convinced themselves it doesn't exist. In this video, we'll dive deep into one of the most profound ideas in modern psychology, the shadow self. We'll unpack how it takes shape, how it silently influences our lives, and how, when left unchecked, it can damage not only those around us, but also the one who carries it. By the time we're done, you might begin to look at others and at yourself in a completely new way. Welcome to our community. We are here to explore the hidden architecture of the mind. If this resonates, hit subscribe and join us. We're not here to sugarcoat the truth. We're here to illuminate it. Jung believed that the human psyche is built in layers. At the surface is the persona, our social mask, the version of ourselves we present to the world. It's who we are at work, at parties, on social media. It's carefully crafted, endlessly managed, and often mistaken for our true identity. But behind the persona lies a vast unconscious realm, and within that realm lives the shadow. The shadow is not a flaw. It's a fundamental part of being human. It holds all the parts of ourselves that we've rejected, hidden, or repressed. Because at some point we were told those parts were wrong. Maybe it was our anger, our need for control, our desire for attention, our jealousy, our sexuality, our sadness, our wildness, our ambition, our hunger for power, our capacity for violence. Whatever didn't fit into the identity we were rewarded for, we buried. And here's the key: everything we bury stays alive. The shadow doesn't die. It waits. It festers. And eventually, it finds a way to act, usually without our awareness. It leaks through the cracks in our persona. It emerges in passive aggression, manipulation, addiction, projection, depression, burnout, and even moral superiority. Jung famously said, "What you do not make conscious will rule your life, and you will call it fate." And the truth is, most people are being ruled by unconscious forces they've never even tried to meet. But Jung went further. He warned us about a specific type of person, the one who believes they're only good. The one who is so identified with being moral, kind, helpful, or enlightened, that they cannot imagine they're capable of harm. That is where the true danger begins, not with the shadow itself, but with its denial. A person who knows they're flawed is usually cautious, humble, reflective. But someone who believes they're incapable of wrongdoing has no reason to question themselves. And that's when the shadow acts in secret. They begin to justify everything. Their control becomes protection. Their manipulation becomes help. Their resentment becomes honesty. Their judgment becomes discernment. They don't say, "I was triggered." They say, "You needed to hear the truth." And they don't realize the harm they cause, because in their mind, they're saving people. We see this dynamic everywhere. In family systems, where one parent sacrifices everything for their children but secretly resents them. In relationships, where one partner controls the other while claiming it's for their safety. In workplaces, where leaders micromanage while insisting they're just detail-oriented. And especially in spiritual communities, where gurus, coaches, and healers act out enormous unconscious shadow material while preaching love and light. This is called spiritual bypassing, using spiritual ideas to avoid doing emotional and psychological work. It's the yoga teacher who shames students for expressing anger. The meditation guide who preaches non-attachment while obsessively protecting their brand. The self-help influencer who offers endless advice but never admits to personal struggle. They've crafted a persona of being above conflict, ego, or negativity. But behind the curtain is a boiling pot of unmet needs and disowned fears. And often, the more someone promotes their moral purity, the more dangerous their shadow becomes. Because the more energy it takes to maintain the mask, the more violently the shadow reacts when it breaks free. That's when we see public scandals, emotional breakdowns, sudden shifts in behavior, or long-term erosion of relationships that look perfect on the outside, but feel toxic on the inside. Now let's take a step back and ask, how does the shadow form in the first place? It begins in childhood. From a very young age, we are constantly receiving messages about what parts of ourselves are lovable, acceptable, and worthy of connection, and what parts are not. Some families teach that crying is weakness, that anger is unacceptable, that being different is dangerous, that success must be earned with suffering, that self-expression is selfish. And so we fragment. We develop the good self and the hidden self. We become polite instead of honest, quiet instead of curious, nice instead of real. Over time, this split becomes our normal. We don't even realize we've locked away parts of our humanity, but they're still there, operating in secret, influencing our choices, our relationships, our addictions, our triggers. And here's where things get worse. The longer we avoid the shadow, the more it mutates. Unfelt anger becomes self-sabotage. Repressed sexuality becomes obsession or numbness. Denied ambition becomes envy. Suppressed sadness becomes chronic burnout. And most painfully, ignored fear becomes the need to dominate. You see, the shadow doesn't just sit still. It adapts. It looks for outlets. If it can't be seen honestly, it will find symbolic ways to emerge. In dreams, in illnesses, in patterns, in relationships that repeat the trauma we never healed. This is what Jung called the path of the wounded self, a person caught in a loop, living out old wounds, blaming others, never realizing the real enemy is within. But here's the part most people miss. The shadow is not evil. It holds the very things we need to become whole. Your anger can become boundaries. Your envy can become inspiration. Your fear can become humility. Your ambition can become leadership. Even your darkness can become depth, empathy, and strength if you're willing to face it. That's the work Jung called individuation, becoming who you truly are by integrating what you've rejected. And it's hard. It requires discomfort, humility, a willingness to question your story, to admit you've caused harm, to see yourself not as a victim, but as a participant in your own life. It means letting go of the fantasy of being good and embracing the truth of being whole. So, what does shadow integration look like in practice? It looks like pausing when you're triggered and asking, what am I really afraid of right now? It looks like admitting you're jealous without judging yourself for it. It looks like apologizing, not just because it's polite, but because you've seen the hurt you caused. It looks like being able to say, I manipulated you because I was scared of losing control. I dismissed you because I didn't want to feel inadequate. I shut down because I didn't know how to handle my sadness. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about taking responsibility for the parts of you that want love, but never learned how to ask for it. It's also about reclaiming the gifts you've buried. Maybe you were told your sensitivity was weakness, but it's actually empathy. Maybe you were told your ambition was arrogance, but it's your drive to create. Maybe you were told your voice was too loud, but it's the voice someone else needs to hear. The shadow isn't just where our wounds live, it's where our power lives. And that's why the most powerful people are often the most dangerous, if they haven't done the work. Because power without shadow work becomes exploitation. Influence without integration becomes manipulation. Leadership without humility becomes tyranny. We see this not just in individuals, but in society. Entire political movements are built on shadow projection. We demonize the other because we don't want to face the conflict within. We declare wars to preserve peace. We censor dissent while claiming to protect freedom. And the media? It thrives on unconscious shadow dynamics. Fear, envy, outrage, moral superiority. It feeds the parts of us we don't want to admit we enjoy. Conflict, drama, division. Even religion, when stripped of humility, becomes a playground for collective shadow, righteousness, exclusion, and control dressed up as divine mission. Jung believed the only way forward, for individuals and for humanity, is the path inward. To recognize that what we hate in others is often a reflection of what we haven't faced in ourselves. That our need to dominate comes from our fear of being vulnerable. That our judgment often masks pain. So what can you do? You can start with honesty. Ask yourself, who triggers me and why? What parts of myself do I hide from others? What am I afraid people will see if I stop performing? Where am I still trying to be good instead of being real? And ask yourself this: what would change in your life if you stopped running from your shadow and started listening to it? Maybe you'd stop apologizing for your power. Maybe you'd stop sabotaging the love you say you want. Maybe you'd finally allow yourself to grieve, to rest, to say no, to take up space. Maybe you'd begin to trust yourself, not as perfect, but as whole. And that's where healing begins. Not in becoming someone better, but in becoming someone truer. So the next time someone insists they're always kind, always calm, always right, pause. Don't attack them, but don't idealize them either. Ask yourself, what are they not seeing in themselves? And more importantly, what are you not seeing in yourself? Because the shadow you refuse to face will one day come to claim you. But the shadow you learn to hold, that's the key to freedom.